My name is Ben Van Heuvelen. I'm the managing editor of Iraq Oil Report, which is a news and information organization. We have bureaus in Baghdad and Erbil and reporters in every province of the country with a special focus on oil producing areas. Well, the major change over the last 2 years is obviously the presence of ISIS and the massive security crisis that has resulted from that. So if I'm looking at the challenges that the country faces, that's probably first up, the security crisis. I think that's related not only to the threat posed by ISIS, but also by the broader degradation and fractionalization of the Iraqi security forces. So I think that brings with it a potential for the breakdown in the rule of law, which is certainly troubling and makes it difficult to operate in many areas of southern Iraq. Then, of course, there's also political instability that comes as a result of that, and another hugely important thing is Iraq's financial crisis, which is related not only to the fall in oil prices and the rising security costs, but also a long history of budget mismanagement and financial problems that predate the most recent crises. Right. Well, I think physical security is obviously at the top of the list. Most international companies are not operating in areas that are really directly threatened by ISIS, at least not in the sense of cities being invaded. There's always the threat of being in the wrong place at the wrong time in the case of some sort of asymmetric attack. Another aspect of the security threat is posed by the increase of militia presence in major cities, especially in Baghdad and Basra. And the problem there, of course, is that certain militias under the Popular Mobilization or Hashid Shabi program are quite loyal to the government and report in a chain of command up to the prime minister. Other militias are far more loyal to their respective political masters, many of whom are far more in the Iranian orbit than answering to the Baghdad government. And so just as a matter of physical security, knowing who's manning the checkpoints and who you're going to have to negotiate with in order to make sure that your personnel stay safe, I think is a huge challenge. So that's the security side. There's also the issue for oil and gas sector right now of payments. The financial crisis has made it really difficult for the Iraqi government to pay companies what they're owed. It's also caused the government to ask oil companies to reduce and modify their field development plans, moderate their ambitions, which is problematic because a lot of the contracts that international companies have signed incentivize rising production. And so if you flatten production, it hurts profit margins. So related to this challenge is a need for companies to engage the Iraqi government in contract renegotiations, which is never a fun thing, never easy, but I think there's recognition on both sides that a lot of the current contracts don't work. A final category of challenge is just day-to-day logistics. Iraq is a very difficult place to work in terms of just physical transportation, moving around, in terms of importing equipment and materials, getting workers in and out of the country, and then working with the Iraqi bureaucracy to approve everything from investment plans to costs associated with projects that you're claiming for reimbursement. So that's three broad challenges. Yeah. Well, clearly I'm doing business in Iraq, so I see some potential there. I think the best answer to that question is just to point out the size of Iraq's oil and gas reserves, their proximity to water, which makes for easy export and transportation, and just the massive opportunity that all of that represents. There's quite a lot of risk that you'd have to be aware of in order for that to offset the size of that opportunity. I think that all of the challenges that we've been talking about are, they can be mitigated. And I think that it takes creative thinking to do it. So one example of that is just to point out that what many oil companies have discovered, which is that in order to secure payments, they need to take their payment in the form of oil rather than in cash. That helps sort of intercept that revenue stream before it gets sucked into the Baghdad bureaucracy and all of the needs in Baghdad. And it also allows them to propose structures for projects where increased oil production really offsets the financial burden on the Iraqi government. I do think that the risks are real, but I think that with creative thinking, they can be mitigated. I also think that, knock on wood, things right now are about as bad as they can get. And if you're entering a negotiation, if you're thinking about doing business somewhere, it's best to get in on the ground floor. So I think this is actually, a ripe time for investors and companies with an appetite for risk and confidence about their ability to learn about those risks and mitigate them to get in there.